and everything, and he's great. Like, I love the DeJounte Murray experience, but the Trae Young experience has not been great at all this year. All that to say, Jrue Holiday, it seems like around the league of people who you would not have guessed would be like, hey, Jrue Holiday, absolute all-star this year, because he's just never felt like that. It's like everyone's like, he's a good player. Like, everybody wants a Jrue Holiday on their team.
He entered the Conley zone. That's where it's been at lately.
Yeah. But is he an all-star to you? Has he actually gotten better in some areas this year that it comes as no surprise to you and Bucks fans that he's getting more love nationally as an all-star?
I think the reason I think he's a little better, but I think he's just been so good and just largely underappreciated. I mean, if you ask any Bucks fan who watches the team a lot, last year when the All-Stars were announced and we heard one of the last ones was Milwaukee Bucks, and we're like, oh, good, Jrue got it, he deserves it. And then Khris Middleton, and we were like, it's great. We'd like to see Khris get his third All-Star. I think that's terrific. Jrue was better last year, for sure, last regular season. And I think this year, the reason he's getting more buzz, and I keep seeing 2 Knicks on and 1 Buck, and I'm like, doesn't sit right with me. Does not sit right with me. You watch Jrue play the quote-unquote all, and I think Jalen Brunson's good. I'm not doing I think Jalen Brunson's good. I don't want to take anything away from him. Watch Jrue Holiday. Actually, Jalen got the better of him in one of the games. But watch Jrue Holiday play these other all-star players, and he usually has the better night out of the all-star guard he's going up against. Jalen Brunson did get him in at least one of those games. But, other guys, Trae Young for sure. The Cavs all-star guards. I mean, Donovan is going to do stuff to everyone, but when the Bucks have beat the Cavs, it's in large part because Jrue is like taking turns putting those guys into a locker. And I think the appreciation has been there because Khris has been out and Giannis missed some games, and he's had to do a lot more when he's been healthy. I think he missed like 11 games this season or 10 games. And those were rough. But he's had to score more. He's had to facilitate more. And he's shot the ball really well, which he does on and off as a Buck. Mostly on. His step back is so good. And he's just had some of those big moments that are like all-star moments. Like the 4 games Giannis missed. They lose 2 in Miami, and then they have a back-to-back against the Pacers, and I forget who the other team was. And maybe the Raptors. And Jrue willed them to win in both fourth quarters. Like, he just took over. And he's like, we're going to win these games. And it's important. Like, those kind of wins, like 2 wins without Giannis, without Khris, everyone else, that matters a lot. And without Ingles for one of them, because he's not playing back-to-backs right now. And there's been a significant amount of games this year where it was like Jrue was the reason they were able to win that game. And his stats look better because of it. I think he's scoring more because he has to. His assist numbers are high, everything else. So, and what he does on defense. So I think the hope is, and we'll find out tonight from when we're recording, the hope is the coaches appreciate that and his defense enough to give him one of the last spots. Because I do think he's been deserving. I would have argued Brook earlier in the season. The shot has fallen off a little bit. He'll probably be on an all-defense team again, if not DPOY. I'll be happy enough with Jrue, but I do think I would like to see Jrue make it.
Yeah, it feels like that ship is sailed with Brook. Brook's like he's not what you want in an all-star game. Like, he's just fun, but he's like, he's an all-star. He's an important linchpin to a team that can win the title. But it's like, no one wants to see the drop coverage stuff from Brook Lopez in the all-star game.
I think Brook would shoot like 23s if they let him play in the all-star, to be clear. His numbers are up. I think he would have fun with it, and he'd be fun to watch. But, I get that, if one of the Knicks goes over Brook,
he comes back the next game after the all-star game, and he's just firing him. And you're like, no, Brook, no,
we're not.
That's not what you're doing.
We're not in that anymore.
Yeah. I like it. We'll end on this. The lineup that you trust the most to get Milwaukee back to the finals this year is what? What do you think? And let's go ahead and assume Jae Crowder is in this deal. Like, you think he's a Buck, and based on where the guys you have and the guys you expect to have, what is the lineup that you trust the most to guide this team back to the finals?
I'm gonna be boring because I think there's some really fun ones with Ingles, who I still do think the lineups that have all of Khris, Jrue, Ingles around Giannis are going to be some of the most fun lineups for the Bucks. Because
do you think Ingles could close?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I think that would be a fun lineup to pick, and I'm excited to see more of it, but I'm not picking it. And then, of course, the super switchy with Crowder going small, I think is really fun too. But I'm going to go with the bread and butter, tried and true, Jrue, Pat, Khris, Giannis, Brook. And I think that's the guys that have been there before, the guys they trust, 5 of the 6 probably most important players in 2021 when they won it all. I think they just trust those guys the most. I don't know how often that lineup will close. I do know, like, although he's not a by default starter, I do think Pat Connaughton has a good chance to close a lot of games just because he does everything.